Hey guys, my name is Kurayami. Welcome back to another chapter of Redeeming Love by Francine Rivers. We are on chapter 12, and it is a longer chapter than we've had in the previous couple of chapters, but let's go ahead and dive right in, shall we? Michael felt the change in Angel after that night, but it was not a change that made him happy. She retreated and held her distance. Though her bruises were gone and her ribs healed, she was still walking wounded. She wouldn't let him close. She regained the weight she had lost after Magawan's vicious beating. She grew physically strong, but Michael sensed a deeper vulnerability in her. He gave her work to give her purpose, and the brothel and cabin parlor disappeared. Yet no life shone in her eyes. Most men would have been satisfied to have such a malleable, hard-working wife. Michael was not. He had not married her to have a drudge. He wanted a woman as part of his life, part of him. Every night was a trial. He lay beside her and breathed in the scent of her until his head swam. She made it clear he could use her body whenever and however he wished. She looked at him every night as she took off her clothes. The question in her eyes made his mouth dry. But he didn't give in. He waited, praying for her heart to soften. Her nightmares continued unabated. She often awakened shaking, her body drenched in perspiration. In the aftermath, she wouldn't even let him touch her. Only after, when she went back to sleep, could he ease his arms around her and tuck her close. She would relax then, and he knew that on some deeper level, she knew she was safe with him. It was a small satisfaction when the natural needs of his body were driving him harder the longer they were together. His mind would create pictures of them making love as if it was written in the Song of Solomon. He would almost feel her arms around him and taste her honeyed kisses. Then he would come out of the daydream and feel more frustrated and bereft than ever. Oh, he could have her now if he wanted. She would be accommodating. She would be expert. And he would know, all the while he poured his hope into her, that she was counting the beams of the ceiling, or the chores for the next day, or anything else that kept her from him. She wouldn't look into his eyes or care that he was dying inside for love of her. The memory was set in Michael's mind. Angel sitting on the end of the bed at the palace, swinging her foot back and forth like a pendulum. It would be just the same now if he gave in his physical desire. It would be Angel, not Mara. Just waiting for him to finish so she could consign him to oblivion with all the other men who had ever used her body. God, what do I do? I'm going crazy. You're expecting too much of me. Or am I expecting too much from her? The answer remained the same. Wait. More than anything, Michael was consumed with the need to hear her say his name. Just once, Jesus. God, please, just once. Michael. An acknowledgement of his existence. Most of the time, she looked right through him. He wanted to be more than someone walking on the periphery of her soul. Someone she was convinced would step on her and use her. Love to Angel was a foul four-letter word. How am I supposed to teach her what love really is when my own instincts are getting in the way? Lord, what am I doing wrong? She's more distant now than she was in paradise. Have patience, beloved. Michael's frustrations built, and he started thinking about his father, who had claimed every woman wanted to be dominated. Michael hadn't believed in it then, and he didn't believe it in now. But he almost wished he could. Believing that lie would make his life with Angel easier. Every time she looked through him, he thought about his father. Every time she moved close to him in sleep, he knew what his father would say about his self-imposed celibacy. He heard another voice, dark and powerful and as old as time. When are you going to act like a man? Go ahead and take her. Why are you holding back? Take her. She belongs to you, doesn't she? Act like a man. Enjoy her body if you can't get anything else from her. What are you waiting for? Michael wrestled with the voice in his head. He didn't want to hear it at all, but it was there, pushing and pushing at him whenever he was most vulnerable. Even when he was on his knees in prayer, he can hear it taunting him. Angel grew restless with time. Something was at work inside her. Something was slow and insidious and threatening. She liked life in this little cabin. She felt comfortable and safe, except for Michael Hosea. She didn't like the emotions he was beginning to arouse in her, the feelings nibbling at her resolve. She didn't like that he didn't fit any mold she knew, that he kept his word, that he didn't use her, that he treated her differently from any way she had ever been treated before. He was never angry when she made mistakes. He complimented and encouraged her. He shared his own mishaps with a sense of humor that made her less annoyed with her own incompetence. He gave her hope that she could learn, and pride when she did. She could build a fire now. She could cook a meal. She could identify edible plants from weeds. She was even beginning to listen to the stories he read each evening, not that she believed a single one of them. The sooner I get away from him, the better. She had unfinished business to take care of back at Paradise. Besides, she could have her own little cabin just like this one when she had her share of the gold she had earned. But she wouldn't have to live with any man. Angel mentally tabulated how much time and money Hosea had spent nursing her back to health and training her for her independence. She intended to repay him every hour, an ounce before she left. She took care of his garden. She cooked, swept, washed, ironed, and mended. When he mucked out a stable, she found a shovel to help. When he chopped firewood for the winter, she filled her arms and made neat stacks beside the barn. By the time 4 months had passed, her skin was brown, her back strong, her hands rough. She looked in the shiny tin again and saw that her face was back to normal. Even her nose had healed straight. It was time to start making plans to go back. Do you suppose those vegetables I've been tending for you would be worth a sack of gold back in Paradise? She asked him one evening over supper. Probably more. Michael looked up. We have enough to buy a couple head of cattle. She nodded, unduly pleased at the thought. Maybe he would buy a cow, and they would have milk. Maybe he would teach her how to make cheese. Angel frowned. What was she thinking? What did it matter to her if he had a dozen cows? She had to go back and set things right in Paradise. She lowered her eyes and ate slowly. The day was coming when she can take off his mother's ring and forget all about him. Angel washed the dishes and ironed while Michael read the Bible aloud. She didn't listen as she pushed the cedron around until it was cold and useless. She put it back on the grill. She lived here with this man for months. She worked like a slave. She'd never worked this hard back at the palace. She looked at her hands. Her nails were broken and short, and she had calluses. What would the Duchess have to say about that? She picked up the cedron again. She tried to make plans, but her mind wandered to the garden, to the baby's bird's nest outside the bedroom window, to the deep, quiet serenity in Michael's Hosea's voice as he read. What's wrong with me? Why do I feel this heaviness inside again? I thought it was gone. It won't be gone until you go back to Paradise and get what the Duchess owes you. Yes, that must be it. Until she went back to Paradise, everything will be left hanging. The old Hadrian had cheated her. Angel couldn't let her get away with it. Besides, Angel reasoned, she ought to be relieved that her time with this farmer was over. But she wasn't. She felt the same way she had the night she watched him ride out of Paradise. Like a hole had been punched in her, and her life was running out. Not in a rush, but in a slow red trickle staining the dirt at her feet. You have to go back, Angel. You must. You'll never be free if you don't. You're going to get your money. There will be a lot of it, and you will be free. You can always build another cabin like this one, and it will be all yours. You won't have to share with the man who expects too much from you. He expects what you don't even have, what you never had. Besides, he's crazy praying to a god who doesn't exist or care, and reading a book of myths like it was the answer to everything. She worried her lip as she worked. She put the cedrian back on the grill to heat it up again. When are we going back to Paradise for supplies? 30 miles was a long walk. Michael stopped reading. He looked up at her. I'm not going back to Paradise. Not at all? But why? I thought you sold your produce to that Jew on Main Street. Joseph. His name is Joseph Hochschild. And yes, I did. I decided it's better not to go back. He knows. There are other places. Marysville, Sacramento. You ought to go back and get your money at least. What money? The gold you paid for me. His mouth tightened. That doesn't matter to me. She looked at him. It ought to matter. Don't you care that you were cheated? She went back to ironing. Michael watched her and realized she wanted to go back. Even after all this time with him, she was hankering after her life in Paradise. His body grew hot and tense. When she went on ironing as though nothing were wrong, seemingly blind to his feelings. He wanted to grab her and shake some sense into her. Does she have any, Lord? Does she? God, haven't I touched her at all? Have I worked her too hard? Or is it that she's just bored with this quiet life? Jesus, what do I do? Chain her like a dog? He thought of something to keep her mind off Paradise for a while. It was a mean, low trick, but the result would keep her on the homestead for a couple more weeks. Maybe she would come to her senses by then. I've got a job for you to do tomorrow, he said, if you're willing. She had been thinking about leaving tomorrow, but it was a long walk and she didn't even know which road to take. She doubted he would point her in the right direction. What was she supposed to do? Ask his God? What is it? She said tersely. There's a black walnut tree in the meadow. The nuts have fallen. I'd like you to go ahead and pick them up. I've got a gunny sack in the barn. You can dump them in the yard to dry. Fine, she said. Whatever you want. He clenched his teeth. Back to that again. Whatever you want. If she said that one more word, he was going to put his father's theory to the test. I'm going to check the stock. He went outside to cool off. He stalked off towards the corral. How do I get through to this woman? He said between his teeth. What do you want from me? Was I supposed to bring her back and give her time to heal and rest before she went back? Whose will is at work here? He couldn't seem to hear the small voice anymore. That night, he was worse off than ever. He almost followed the desires of his body rather than his heart and mind, but he knew what was expected. He got up and went down to the creek. The cold water helped, but it was no cure for what ailed him. Why are you doing this to me, Lord? Why did you give me this bull-headed, maddening girl? She's turning me inside out. Angel knew when he left the bed. She wondered where he was going. She missed his warmth. When he came back, she pretended to be asleep. But rather than get back into bed with her, he sat in the willow chair before the fire. What was he brooding about? Cattle? His crops? He was asleep in the chair when she got up in the morning. Angel shrugged off his old shirt and gathered her clothing. When she turned slightly, she saw him staring at her. She knew what was wrong. She had seen that look on men's faces often enough to know what it meant. Was that all that ailed him? Well, why hadn't he said so? She strained, lowering her arms slowly so he could look at her, and she gave him her old smile. A muscle jerked in his cheek. He stood and took off his hat from the hook by the door and went out. She frowned, perplexed. Angel prepared his breakfast and waited for him to come in. When he did, he ate without so much as a word. She had never seen him in such a foul mood before. He looked at her darkly. Have you decided whether you're going to pick up those nuts? Her brows flickered up. I'll pick them. I didn't know you were in such a hurry. She scraped her chair back and went out to the barn for the gunny sack. It took several hours to fill it. She dragged her load back and dumped the nuts. She shook out the sack, proud of her work. Michael was splitting logs. Pausing, he wiped his brow with the back of his hand and nodded towards the heap. Is that all? Her smile evaporated. Isn't this enough? I thought there'd be more. She stiffened. You mean you want all of them? Yes. Tight-lipped, she went back. Maybe he's part squirrel, she muttered under her breath. Maybe he figured on selling them along with the vegetables and smoked venison. Stubborn and angry, she kept at it right through the noon meal. Let him fix something to eat for himself. If he wants nuts, he's going to get nuts. It was near dusk when she dumped the last sack in the barn. Her back was a mass of pain. I sniffed all through the leaves and couldn't find any more, she told him. She longed for a long, hot soak, but the thought of toting one bucket of water made her give up the idea. We've got enough there to share with the neighbors. Share? I didn't know we had any neighbors, she said angrily, pulling a wayward strand of blonde hair out of her mouth. She hadn't done all this work for a bunch of strangers. Let them pick their own nuts. What do you care, Angel? You're not going to be here. I'm going to wash up and fix supper, she said, and headed for the creek. Do that, Michael said. He grinned and jabbed a pitchfork into the hay again. He started to whistle. Half an hour later, Mara stormed back. Look at this! She held up her hands for him to see her blackened palms and fingers. I've used soap. I've used grease. I even rubbed them with sand. How do you get this stuff off? It's the dye from the holes. You mean they're going to stay like this? For a couple weeks. Her blue eyes narrowed. Did you know this would happen? He smiled slightly and pitched the hay into a stall. Why didn't you tell me? Michael leaned back on the pitchfork. You didn't ask. Her stained hands balled into fists and her face filled with angry color. She didn't look indifferent or aloof anymore. He added fuel to the fire already blazing. The nuts have to be peeled and dried before we can sack them again. Then you and I'll have all winter long to crack them. He saw the heat coming into her face. She was ready to explode. You did it on purpose. His own temper was beneath the surface, so he held his silence. How am I supposed to go back now with my hands looking like this? She can just hear the Duchess laughing at her dun-colored hands. She can just imagine the remarks. Michael's mouth curved wryly. You know, Mara, if you were really that set on going back to paradise, you'd have been on your way weeks ago. She blushed, which only added to her fury. She hadn't blushed in years. Why this? She demanded hotly. You got your money's worth out of me. He heaved the pitchfork into the haystack. I haven't gotten anything from you yet, lady. Nothing worth anything. Fury made the red haze before her eyes. Maybe you're just not a man enough to take it the usual way. She swung around and stared out the barn, calling him a foul name under her breath. Michael's own temper erupted. He caught up with her and swung her around. Don't mutter it under your breath, Mara. Come on. Say it to my face. Let's get your real feelings for me in the open. She yanked free of him. She screamed names up at him. She knew plenty. She saw his anger and jerked her chin up, daring him. Go ahead and hit me. Maybe it'll make you a man. Not likely, but that's what you want, isn't it? Another beating. More hard knocks. He was afraid of his own raising emotions. The hot, surging blood that made him almost call her a challenge. He was shaking with the power of it. It's the only thing you know, and you're too full of your own stubborn pride to find out if there's anything else in the world. Don't make me laugh. You think you're any different from the rest? I'm quit of this place. I've matched you hour for hour. You've had your gold's worth of work out of me. Hogwash. You're just running because you're scared. Because you're beginning to like it here. She swung at him, but he blocked her hand. She swung again, and he caught her wrist. Finally, I have your full attention. He let her twist free. At least you're looking at me instead of through me. Angel spun away and marched across the yard. She went into the cabin and slammed the door. Michael expected to see something come crashing through the window, but nothing did. His heart was pounding like a locomotive. He let out his breath and pushed his fingers back through his hair. It was going to be an open warfare from here on out. Well, so be it. Anything was better than her apathy. He went back to his work. When he came in, Mara seemed calm enough. She glanced at him and gave him a sweet smile as she ladled stew into a bowl and set it on the table for him. One cautious taste and he knew there was enough salt in it to pickle him. The biscuits had sand in them, and when he looked into the mug of coffee, he saw half a dozen flies floating in the steaming surface. He laughed and pitched the coffee out the door. What else had she cooked up for him? Why don't we discuss what's really bothering you? Angel folded her hands on the table. I've only got one thing to say. I'm not going to stay here with you forever. He just looked at her with that faint, anemic smile on his face that made her want to use the club on him. I'm not, she said again. We'll take one day at a time, beloved. He took a can of beans from the shelf and opened them. Her eyes were hot enough to fry a steak. He leaned his hip against the counter and ate his cold meal. She glared up at him. I don't belong here and you know it. Where do you think you belong? Back in that bordello? That's my choice, isn't it? You don't even know you've got a choice yet. You think there's only one way to go, and that's straight downhill to hell. I know what I want. Then would you mind telling me? I want to get out of here. She got up and went outside, too angry and frustrated to look at him. Michael set the can down and came to lean on the doorway. I don't believe you. I know, but I don't see that what I want is any of your business. He laughed, but it wasn't an amusement. She glared back at him, her eyes glittering in the moonlight. What everything did you have in mind when you brought me here? Michael didn't answer for a long moment. He wondered if he could make her understand. He wondered if he could even put in 2 words. I want you to love me, he said, and saw the derision on her face. I want you to trust me enough to let me love you. And I want you to stay here with me so we can build a life together. That's what I want. Her anger dissolved at his sincerity. Mister, can't you understand that's impossible? Anything's possible. You don't have any idea who and what I am other than what you've created in your own mind. Then tell me. Go ahead, Angel. Tell him. He could never even guess at the things that had been done to her or that she had done. Oh, she could tell him. Level the gun. Both barrels. Point blank. Straight for his heart. Annihilation. That would put a quick end to everything. Why does she hold back? Michael came outside. Mara, he said, His gentle voice was like salt on her wounds. My name isn't Mara. It's Angel. Angel. No, it isn't. And I'll call you by what I see. Mara. Mara, embittered by life. Tariza, my beloved who stirs a fire in me until I feel like I'm melting. He moved towards her. You can't stop running away. Don't you see that? He stopped right in front of her. Stay here. Stay with me. We'll work things through together. He touched her. I love you. Do you know how many times I've heard those words before? I love you, Angel. You're such a pretty little thing. I love you, sweetheart. Oh, baby, I love you when you do that. Say you love me, Angel. Say it so I believe you. As long as you do what I tell you, I'm going to love you, Angel. I love you, I love you. I'm sick to death of hearing it. She stared at him angrily, but the look on his face defeated her. She hugged herself tightly. Don't think. Don't feel anything. It'll destroy you if you do. She tried to focus on something else. The night sky was so clear, stars everywhere, and a moon so big it seemed to be a single silver eye staring down. Her mind and emotions still boiled. She tried to call up her defenses, but they had dispersed. She wanted to be up on that hilltop, seeing the sunrise again. She remembered his words. Mara, that's the life I want to give you. Who is he kidding? She knew it could never happen, even if he still didn't. Her eyes burned. I want to go back to paradise as soon as possible. Am I getting too close? She swung around. I'm not staying here with you. She tried to calm down and reason with him. Look, mister, if you knew even half of what I've done, you would have me headed back to paradise so fast. Try me. Go ahead and see if it makes a difference. Angel withered at the thought. She had opened Pandora's box and couldn't get it closed again. The horrible, grotesque memories rose from the dead. Her father, Mama dead, clutching her rosary. Rab with the cord around his neck because he knew Duke was not the moral, upstanding citizen the public thought he was. Duke raping her over and over again. The dozens of men in the years that followed, and the hunger, the endless aching hunger inside herself. Michael could see her face white in the moonlight. He didn't know what she was thinking, but he knew that she was tormented by her past. He reached out to touch her cheek. I wish I could open your mind and climb inside with you. Maybe the two of them could fight off the darkness that was trying to swallow her whole. He wanted to hold her, but she had withdrawn from him entirely. God, how do I save her? Angel looked up at him and saw the sheen of moisture in his eyes. Shock ran through her. Are you crying? For me? She said weakly. Don't you think you're worth it? Something inside her cracked. She writhed inside to escape the feeling, but it was there nonetheless, growing with the light touch of his hand on her shoulder, with every soft word he spoke. She was sure if she put her hands against her heart, her palms would come away covered in her own blood. Was that what this man wanted? For her to bleed for him? Tell me, Amanda, he whispered. Talk to me. Amanda? What's this name supposed to mean? I don't know, it just sounds like a gentle, loving name. He smiled slightly. I thought you might prefer it to Mara. He was a strange man, giving to strange ways. What had become of her defenses? Where was her defiance and anger, her resolve? What do you want to hear, mister? She said, meaning to sound amused and failing. What could she tell a man like him that he would even understand? Anything. Everything. She shook her head. Nothing. Ever. Michael cupped her face tenderly. Then just tell me what you are feeling right now. Pain, she said, before she thought better of it. She pushed his hands away and went back to the cabin. She was cold and desperate to get warm. She knelt down by the fire, but even its warmth couldn't permeate. She could lie in the coals and still not melt the chill attacking her. Run away from him, Angel. Run away now. Stay, beloved. Voices roared in her head, pulling at her very soul. Michael came inside and sat down beside her on the floor, watching quietly as she drew up her knees and hugged them against her chest. He knew she was trying to shut him out again. He wasn't going to help her succeed this time. Give your pain to me, he said. Surprised, Angel looked at him. She was in a wilderness with this man. She was desperate to find familiar road, some known landmark to guide her away. She couldn't remember the last time she had even felt close to tears. She had no tears, not anymore. Hosea perplexed her. I've done everything for you, but the one thing I know best. She searched his eyes. Why not? His expression changed, and she felt a softening towards him. He was vulnerable, and oddly she felt no desire to attack his defenses. Are you afraid? Is that what holds you back? Do you think I'd make fun of you because you've never been with a woman before? Michael took a strand of her hair and rubbed it between his fingers. Where were all his rational answers now? I suppose it's entered my mind. But more than that, I need to know why. Why what? She asked, not understanding. Why would you make love with me? Why? She would never understand this man. All the men she had ever known would expect her to thank them if they had given her so much as a box of candy or a bouquet of flowers. This man had kept her alive and nursed her back to health. He had taught her things that would help her live on her own, and now he wanted to know why she offered her body to him. Would gratitude be enough reason? No. It wasn't in my hands whether you lived or died. That was up to the Lord. Angel turned her head away. Don't talk to me about your God. He didn't come back for me. You did. She put her forehead against her raised knees and said nothing more. Michael started to speak, but the voices held him back. Michael, there is a time and place for all things. He sighed inwardly, heeding the message. She wasn't ready to listen to the why and wherefore. It would be acid, not salve. So he held his silence. Lord, please guide me. Fire crackled, and Angel began to relax just listening to the soothing sounds. I wanted to die, she said. I couldn't wait, and just when I thought I had, there you were. Do you still want to die? No, but I don't know why I want to live either. The siege of emotion passed. She turned her head slightly and looked at him again. Maybe it has something to do with you. I don't know anything anymore. Joy leapt inside Michael, but only briefly. She looked hurt, not happy. Confused, not certain. He wanted to touch her, and was afraid if he did, she would take it the wrong way. Comfort my lamb. If I touch her now, Lord, comfort your wife. Michael took her hand. Her whole arm stiffened, but he didn't let go. He turned her hand over in his and smoothed his fingers down over her blackened palm and fingers so that his large hand covered hers. We're in this together, Amanda. I don't understand you, Angel said. I know, but give me time and you will. No, I don't think I ever will. I don't know what you want from me. You say everything and take nothing. I see the way you look at me, but you never treated me as a wife. Michael turned the gold band on her finger. She was his wife. It was time he did something about it. If she didn't know the difference between having sex and making love, he would have to show her. Oh God. I'm afraid of the depth of my physical desire. Most of all, he was afraid he would not know how to pleasure her. Lord help! Angel watched him looking at the ring on her finger. Do you want it back? No. He wove his fingers with hers and smiled at her. I'm just as new at being married as you are. A calm settled over him, and he knew everything would be all right. Angel looked away. Married men had come to her plenty of times, and she knew what they had to say about it. Their wives didn't understand them. They married them for convenience and progeny. They were bored with the same woman and needed a little change, like having steak for dinner instead of stew, fish instead of chicken. Most said their wives didn't enjoy sex. Did they think she did? What I know about marriage isn't encouraging, mister. Maybe not, Michael kissed her hand. But I believe marriage is a contract between a man and a woman to build a life together. It's a promise to love one another no matter what comes. You know what I am. Why would you make a promise like that to me? I knew what you were. She felt an ache inside her. You'll never learn, will you? Leaning over, Michael tipped her face toward him and kissed her. She didn't pull away, but she wasn't moved either. Lord, I could use a little help down here. He shook as he combed his fingers into her hair and kissed her again. He was so tentative. Angel relaxed. She could handle this. She can handle him just fine. She can even help him along. Michael drew back. He wasn't going to allow his desire become rampant. He wasn't going to embrace sex and lose sight of love, no matter how much more comfortable she would be with that. My way, not yours, remember? He stood up. Angel watched him in confusion. What do you know about it? We'll have to wait and see. Why do you make things difficult for yourself? It all comes down to the same thing. It won't be my way or your way. It's just the way it is. A sexual act was what she meant, but he didn't know how to show her it meant to be a celebration of love. All Angel saw was his determination. She stood slowly and joined him. If it has to be your way, fine. It'll be your way, in the beginning. Michael looked into her eyes and saw no hardness. Neither did he see understanding. He wasn't sure which part of himself to listen anymore. He was hard-pressed by his physical nature. She was so beautiful to him. Let me help you, she said, and took his hand. Michael sat in the willow chair, his heart in his throat as she knelt before him and pulled off his boots. He was losing control fast. Standing, he moved away from her. He unbuttoned his shirt and shrugged it off. As he undressed, Michael kept thinking about Adam in the Garden of Eden. How had he felt the first time Eve came to him? Scared half to death, yet surging with life? When Michael turned, his wife stood naked before the fire, waiting for him. She was breathtaking, just as Eve must have been. Michael came to her in wonder. Oh, Lord, she's so perfect, like no other creation in the world, my mate. He swung her up into his arms and kissed her. As he stretched out beside her on their marriage bed, he marveled at how she fit him, flesh to flesh, molded for him. Oh, Jesus, he whispered, awestruck by the gift. Angel felt him shaking violently and knew it was due to his long self-imposed celibacy. Strangely, she was not repulsed. Instead, she felt an alien sense of sympathy. She pushed the feeling away, blocking him out of her mind, and was surprised when he drew back from her and searched her eyes. His own filled with so much she turned her face away. Think of your money in paradise, Angel. Think of going back and getting it from the Duchess. Think of having something for yourself. Think of being free. Don't think of this man. It had worked for her in the past. Why not now? Come on, Angel. Remember how you used to close your mind? You've done it before. Do it again. Don't think. Don't feel. Just play the part. He'll never know. But Michael wasn't like other men, and he did know. He didn't have to die to realize she had brought him to the edge of heaven and slammed the gates in his face. "Beloved," he said, turning her face back to him, "why won't you let me get close to you?" She tried to laugh. "How close do you want to be?" She could feel the difference in this man right through her pores and sought to protect herself from him. Michael saw the flatness in her blue eyes, and it broke his heart. "You keep shutting me out, Teresa. Stay with me." "Is it Teresa now?" "Oh, Jesus, help me. Stop running from me." Angel wanted to cry out. "Not from you, from this. From the mindless, selfish grasping for pleasure. Theirs and yours, not mine. Never mine." But she didn't. Instead, she challenged him in anger. "Why do you have to talk?" She struggled, but he was unyielding. Why did he have to keep intruding on and interfering with her thoughts, breaking her concentration? He kept confusing her feelings, stirring them into a boiling mess. He held her and looked into her eyes and was aware of her, and something deep within her shifted. Her panic grew, and she closed her eyes. "Look at me, beloved." "Don't." "Don't what? Don't you love me? Don't become part of you? I am part of you. This way? In every way." "No," she said, struggling. "Yes." He gentled. "This can be beautiful. It doesn't mean that what you've been taught. It's a blessing. Oh, my love, say my name." How could he think this could be anything but vile and simple? She knew everything there was to know about it. Hadn't Duke taught her? Hadn't all the rest? So this farmer wanted to know what it was really like. Well, she would show him. "Don't." His raspy command confused her. "Don't you want me to please you?" "You want to please me? Say my name." His breath mingled with hers. "You said you wouldn't say no to anything I asked of you, remember? I wanted you to say my name. Anything you said. Can't you keep your word?" His calm left. "Say it." "Michael," she groaned out. He cupped her face. "Look at me. Say it again." Michael. Was he satisfied now? She waited for his triumphant grin, instead saw his adoring eyes and heard his tender voice. "Keep on saying it." When it was over, Michael held her close, telling her how much he loved her and of the pleasure he found in her. He was no longer hesitant, no longer the least unsure, and with his growing assurance, her own doubts expanded. Some unknown and unwelcome emotion opened deep inside Angel. Something hard and tight began to soften and uncurl. And as it did, the dark voice arose. "Get away from this man, Angel. You got to get out of here. Save yourself and flee. Flee." Well, guys, that was end of chapter 12. Things kind of take a little interesting turn there at the end. If you like and want to hear more, consider commenting, or subscribing, but do whatever you want. I don't really care. Now, see you in the next video. Bye, guys.